Can you just touch upon
Exactly.
really quickly the importance of iodine?
Yeah, iodine is super, super important. Most doctors and dietitians are mortified
Yes.
when they find out somebody is supplementing iodine because all they remember is when they were a little kid, the little bottle of mercurochrome or methylate that had the skull and crossbones on it that their grandmother had in the pantry, right? And so they think iodine will kill you. Then also, they think about radioactive
Yes.
iodine, like with Chernobyl, and then everybody had thyroid cancer, and they don't just sit down and do some simple research and do some simple brushing up on their human physiology, and they either forget or they never learned that every single cell in the human body that we've ever studied, and this is, I still stand by this without exception, there is not a cell line in the human body that does not contain a sodium iodide symporter
Right.
on the cell membrane. Now, what this is a little machine, little cellular machine that grabs iodine from outside of the cell and pulls it into the cell, and it requires energy to do that. Now, if any of you guys remember any of your biology, you know that a cell doesn't do anything that costs energy unless it's important.
Right.
That's just a basic tenet of animal biology, right? And I am an animal biologist by training. That's what I got my undergrad degree in. And so immediately you're like, wait, every single cell in the human body has sodium iodide importers on it, and they're spending energy to pull iodine inside the cell. By anybody who understands biology, that's the end of the argument. Iodine is not dangerous. Iodine is absolutely required, right? It is an essential mineral. But most doctors think it's just about the
Thyroid.
thyroid. Maybe if they've read a little bit extra, they know it's about the thyroid and the mammary glands, right? And if they've really done their homework, they know it's about the thyroid, the mammary glands, and the salivary glands, because those are the three big tissues that concentrate it to supra physiological levels. And that is true. But every single cell, from the skin cells in your toe to the cells in your ovaries or testes to the cells in your retina, all of them have sodium iodide importers. They need iodine on a daily basis. And that's why, if I could go back, I would add seafood, is because if there is a chance, if you're eating even a well-formulated ketogenic diet, that if the soil that the plants grew in that you're eating, if there was no iodine in that soil, there will be no iodine in the plants. And if the meat and the eggs that you're eating, if the animal did not graze on soil that contained iodine, then so cows are magical, but they cannot create iodine out of nothing. It was either in the soil, fed the grass, they ate the grass, now it's in the cow, or there's not enough iodine in the beef. That's just how it is. Same goes for eggs, same goes for every other animal on the planet. And indeed, in the middle of very large continents like North America, there are places called gorder belts where virtually everyone, if iodine's not supplemented into their diet somehow, they'll have a big, huge gorder. And that's their thyroid gland getting bigger and bigger, trying to get enough iodine to do their body's functions. And that's why we started to iodize salt back around World War I, is because they couldn't get any of the young men from Minnesota, Wisconsin, all that part of the United States. They couldn't draft them because they all had these huge gorgers, which would get you disqualified. And so they talked to the salt manufacturers and said, please start putting some salt so we can draft all these boys to go fight in the war. And that's where that came from. Now, iodized salt is a terrible source of iodine because iodine, like many other elements, can sublimate. It can go from a solid form to a gas form. And so if that Umbrella Girl salt is set on the shelf for 6 months or a year, there's no iodine left in that. All the iodine is sublimated. Okay, number one. And then number two, Umbrella Girl salt and many other popular brands of salt contain dextrose, which is literal sugar.
Right.
They put sugar in the salt. Not joking. Look at the ingredients. And so how did our ancestors get iodine? Then that becomes important, right? Well, they knew about certain outcrops of rock that you would go and you would get that rock and grind it up or just lick the rock like many wild animals do. Most of us live near the ocean. And indeed, if you live within 50 miles of a coastline, most of the soil there has plenty of iodine in it, just because of the salt spray picked up by the wind and carried inland. And so you don't have to worry about that if you live near a coastline. But if you live in the interior of Asia, the interior of Europe, the interior of North America, or even South America, you need to think about iodine and supplementing it somehow.
I interview so many people, and I know that you do so many educational videos, because my next question was going to be, well, I know people are going to think about iodized salt, and then you just answered it for me. So it's
Because I answer this a lot. I know where to go, right?
I know, I love it. But the only other thing I would add to everything you said, which I 100% agree with, is when our in fact, with our thyroid hormone, T4 is created with, I think it's tyrosine, so an amino acid, and iodine. So you do need it also for thyroid function.
Absolutely.
And I know so many thyroid doctors say you cannot supplement iodine, which is, it's just incorrect information.
You would expect that endocrinologists would just know this stuff, because I can remember as a medical student and as a resident, an endocrinology resident was considered a nerd's nerd. Okay. And so were neurosurgeons. You know, there was just they were like, they're a nerd's nerd, which is a compliment in medical school. That's not derogatory. That's like the ultimate compliment. Like, I'm a nerd, but that guy's really a nerd. Okay. But literally, that's who's most often going to tell a patient, oh, you need to stop the iodine supplementation. That's dangerous. You have Hashimoto's, or you have hypothyroidism, you have hyperthyroidism, or even you have thyroid cancer. You can't be supplementing with iodine. All of those statements are ignorant in the exact way. If you looked up the #1 definition at Webster.com, what does ignorant mean? That's how I mean that word. They currently do not know what the hell they're talking about. When even people with thyroid cancer, they need a source of iodine in their diet each and every day. And to say they don't is ignorant. I'm sorry to be abrasive, but you're literally dealing with people's lives at that level. And you tell someone to stop their iodine supplementation when they're already depleted. That's terrible advice.
No, I love it. I love it that you just call it for what it is. Sometimes I feel that because I'm not an MD, if I said something like that, people would counter, but I love that as an MD, you just call it. So I love it.